This is the Team Objection podcast for October 4th. Almost botched it. 2018,
Nailed it.
episode 362. I had a window covering the part that had the date and the episode number, so I look over and it just says, like, episode. And
Episode.
it's really not helpful. More like I'm a sod.
You're a clod.
It makes me sad. As you can see, if you're doing the proper channels for doing this podcast now, which is video, you can see there's no Sean this week. If you're hearing, your ears have just experienced for the first time, there's no Sean this week. He's on a date.
Ooh.
I mean, any other night of the week, right?
I
What do
mean,
we-
Girlfriend couldn't do it.
sure,
Couldn't hack it.
she had work. I get it. At the same time, I also don't get it.
I also feel like had I done that,
You would have been
it-
crucified.
yeah. So
Literally
why
and
is he getting a
figuratively.
pass? Why is he
I'm-
getting a pass on this?
I'm going on my date after this. So, dang.
I went on my dates last weekend like a normal person.
It's hard to find time for dating when you work 60-hour weeks.
Yeah.
So,
That's not a thing.
date nights it is. Anyways,
All right.
this episode has nothing to do with dates and everything to do with Michelle climbing mountains.
It does! I climbed a mountain.
And you're like, you're probably wondering why I'm bringing that up when you two know exactly what we're going to later. But remember, one of the focal points of the two things we're talking about later is actually climbing a mountain.
that's a good point.
Think
I
about
actually,
it.
Stay
okay.
tuned, folks.
right.
Yes.
Doo-doo-doo-doo. Yeah, so I climbed a little mountain over the weekend, and
Oh, a
I
little
didn't-
mountain.
Yeah, and I didn't die. It was about 2,000 foot elevation gain over the course of 2 miles, and then 2 miles back, 2.5 miles, and then 2.5 miles back. It was really cool, but it was so cloudy and foggy at the top, I could literally not see anything more than 10 feet in front of me. So,
Great view.
That's
Yeah.
so cool. I actually really have always wanted to climb a mountain when it's like that because
Yeah.
obviously in Phoenix it's never like that.
that's true.
So-
It was cool. It's like the actual trail up was really neat by itself. Like it was super green and like kind of rainforesty, and then so it didn't really matter that the top you couldn't see. Apparently, you could see like the Cascade Mountains from the top of it, and also like I don't know, all the like Mount Rainier and stuff like that. But I couldn't see any of it, but it didn't really matter because it was really fun. It was really steep in parts, like really steep in parts. I had no idea. I'm like, here we go, just like totally ill prepared, but it was
So-
really cool.
So you didn't climb up to the top of like Mount Hood or something like that. That'd be
Oh
crazy.
God, no! Oh my God, I am like so not ready for anything like that. This is like baby
Is that-
mountain.
Is that even possible? Like without climbing equipment and like professional stuff?
I think you need professional like ice picks and shit like that.
Yeah, I
Like,
thought so.
it's-
Mount
yeah,
Hood's pretty big.
yeah, it's a lot, and I am not prepared for that. There are a lot of mountains nearby that are like twice as much as what I did on the weekend, and I'm not ready for those either. That's not even close to Mount Hood. Like, so yeah, I have a long way to go. But I wasn't super sore because I've been walking so much this past summer and spring. So like, I'm a little bit in shape. I wasn't dying.
I've always been amazed at how different of a workout though hiking is. Like
That's true.
because I hiked Squaw Peak in Phoenix. For people who know what that is, I hiked Squaw Peak. The first time I ever did it, I was in pretty good shape. I was playing basketball a lot. I was running a lot, and I tried to keep up with someone who hiked Squaw Peak all the time, and I had to stop like 3/4 of the way up and be like, I have to take a break. Like I can't
Yeah.
move at right this moment. And I thought I was in pretty good shape at the time.
Yeah, it's a totally different thing. You're training different muscles.
And
Like,
the gain in
yeah.
elevation is just like throws you off a bit. So
A lot of
Yeah, it's
people
no joke.
A lot of people will tackle the Grand Canyon without understanding what that rim to rim hike looks like. And even experienced hikers who regularly do like 15, 20 mile hikes, because the difference in elevation, will cramp up and then have to be airlifted out like bitches.
Yeah, that happens a lot actually. It's really common. So yeah, I was pretty proud. I think I'm gonna keep doing that. Hopefully get better at it. I don't actually know what Squaw Peak. Do you know the elevation gain in that? Or how long it is? Or
I
both?
have to look it up. It's not easy. It's not the hardest mountain in Phoenix because I think Camelback is probably the hardest one. Some of the trails there, but it's not easy. It's definitely above average difficulty. I think
PS to a peak.
it's Squaw Peak.
It's
It's still America West Arena, and it's still
20
Bank One Ballpark.
2,610 feet at its apex. The second highest behind Camelback Mountain, which is not shocking. So the elevation in Phoenix, what, a grand?
Nah, yeah, about.
It's not
Yeah,
sea
so-
level, so maybe it's
No,
1,500
no.
feet or so. Not super
Okay.
high.
But
No.
how long is the trail up
That
to the summit?
I don't know. I've actually never
But
hiked it.
if I remember, it's like 2.25 miles or something like that.
Okay.
The
Yeah, no,
Freedom
that's-
Trail.
That's pretty on par with what I did. And yeah, no, I had to stop a couple of times. And I was just like, oh, I'm sorry, this is my life. At least you're not having to carry me up. So there we go.
Yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's hiking. I don't know. It's enjoyable. It's one of those things that you hate doing it while you're doing it, but then once you're done, you're like, yeah, all right.
I know. And it's also if you have a good view. I think that's why I like climbing things like mountain, because you have a good view on as soon as you're going up, it's better and better. And so it feels more rewarding than if you're just like on like a flat overland trail. It's kind of like, okay, it's like the same scenery. Like, where do I see cool stuff?
Unless the flat trail has a lot of differences to it. There were a couple in Hawaii, for example, that would change significantly, even though it didn't have any elevation changes, but those are rare.
That sounds amazing. That's a totally different ballgame. I would love to go to Hawaii and do stuff like that.
Oh, I'd love to. That'd be the best.
Yeah.
Even Colorado has a couple places like that where you'd expect, even up in the mountains, there are still trails that are relatively flat, but some of them will go from like, here's a whole section of aspen trees, and here's one that was cleared out by a wildfire, and here's pine trees, and here's this, and it's like, okay, that mixes it up enough.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point, actually. I'm just being a bitch because I like climbing mountains, I guess.
Confirmed.
Oh, man.
So the first thing we have on the docket tonight has nothing to do with mountains, so it's going to seem like the worst segue in history, but I promise you it'll pay off by the end. Or it won't,
Just be
and I'm
patient.
lying.
Just be patient. It's okay.
So, we're doing Time Capsule this week. We actually have a new segment we're probably going to be debuting next week. I don't want to promise it because Lord knows everybody's schedules are all screwed up, but might be debuting it. It's kind of similar to Time Capsule, but different. So this week is Time Capsule, and that's the segment where we decide if things go into our personal TOP/ATB time capsule, where future scholars down the road, 50-plus years, are going to open it up and be like, look at all this cool shit that's in here.
Look at my stuff.
Look at this graph.
Oh my god! I recently... Okay, Chris, before we move on, I just have to say, I didn't know that there was a full-length song with that shit.
Mm-hmm.
I was crying this weekend because I found it and I did not know, and it was like too much, way too much. It was so funny.
I feel like I'm constantly on the outside looking in.
It's that Nickelback meme where it's like, look at this photograph, but it's like they manipulated it so it says like, look at this graph, and the way that he says it, it's like...
He's holding a bar graph in his hands instead of a photo.
Perfect.
There's also versions
fantastic.
of it where all the lyrics are every time I do it makes me laugh after the first time he says it. Every time I do it makes me laugh. And every time I do it makes me laugh.
No, it's so funny. I was just getting a kick out of it. It was hilarious.
See, that song is just such a horrific song that you can just do whatever you want with it and it's still okay.
It's terrible. Oh my god. I was rolling with laughter.
There's also something I showed Michelle a couple months back where it's like discordant versions of popular songs where people have intentionally taken even video versions and edited them so that it sounds awful. Parts don't make sense, verses just tail off. The beat doesn't have any rhythm. It's just like if Queen or other groups that were really good were just awful. Like they all had a simultaneous stroke.
That was so funny.
Yeah.
The Queen ones especially were killing me.
And you can tell it takes talent. It takes talent to be that consistently bad.
Yes.
Somebody who understands music had to go through and butcher it. If it was just somebody who was bad, you would know. Anyways.
Love it.
Nickelback tangent over. We head back to Time Capsule.
Later.
Spoiler alert, Nickelback albums would not make it into Time Capsule.
Nickelback in general would not make it.
Okay, hold on. I might say that Nickelback would have a shot at making the Time Capsule just as a reminder to future generations not to fuck up this badly.
See, I would say I would put them in the Time Capsule only because it would get them out of our hair for the next 50 years.
Oh, damn.
And or because they wouldn't have oxygen and they would die in space.
True.
Both.
But if we just drop like a CD in there, that wouldn't do the trick.
No, unfortunately. We have to actually put the band and whatever their names are. Also,
hell if I know.
It's pouring right now.
Really?
Yeah, we have a
pouring rain here.
Yeah, we have a
That's right.
Hurricane Rosa after effect tropical storm now, I think. But yeah.
Oh, okay.
The nice thing is it's not like thunder, so I'm not worried about the power. But we'll live life on the edge anyways.
That's fun.
Time Capsule as mentioned before, the segment where we vote on things, we had to come to a consensus on it. We talk about things then when we first experienced them, and now, hopefully taking off those like nostalgia goggles, but then the now score is what matters. If we average a 7 or higher, it goes in the time capsule. It's like 50-50, I think, if you look at the whole history of the show on things that have made it in and things that haven't. So it's a decently high bar you have to clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
7 is average to above average, probably above average. So
yeah, and we're critical as hell. So strap in, everyone.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to tackle 2 similar things this week, and we'll see if you can piece together what all these references have been to the end of the show by thinking about what's similar here. First up is a show that was revived just recently. In fact, it started in June, which I was like, oh god, that was further back than I thought it was. I saw a commercial like 2 months ago. Apparently I missed the boat.
Whoa.
This show also debuted in 1986, which I went, oh shit, 1986.
Oh my god.
That's the year after Dave and I were born.
Michelle wasn't born yet.
No.
She has not even a twinkle in anyone's eye.
Mm-mm.
I'm still not a twinkle in anyone's eye, to be honest.
No. I don't know if any of us are.
You're not wrong.
The show we're referring to is the Nickelodeon classic Double Dare, also known as Family Double Dare, Super Sloppy Double Dare. There was a 2000 version, I remember, where they tried to update the set.
I want to say they made Ultra Double Dare or something like that.
There might be a couple other
ones,
ones, too. Those are the ones I remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But
There's
Double
been a
Dare.
bunch of them.
The show were mostly families. Occasionally it was just kids, but there was a family version that also, I think, became the norm going forward, where it was, a couple grown-ups, couple kids, because they just liked watching the grown-ups have to fit into the small obstacles and get slimed all the time.
Yeah.
But essentially a game show format. There's a trivia section, there's a challenge section. I mean, we can go into more details as we go, but for people who have never seen it, it was peak Nickelodeon. There's slime, there's kids, there's attitude, there's funky fresh, and that's all you need.
So this is again one of those game shows that I watched and immediately placed myself into their position, be like, oh, I could do that. Yeah, I could do that. Oh, why aren't they running faster? Or like, why aren't they catching whatever they're throwing better? Or like, oh, I don't care that I'm diving into this gross stuff. I always put myself in that position. So as a kid, it was definitely appealing to me.
Yeah, I agree. I was the same way. I would watch game shows with like actual adult game shows with my grandma. It was like how we bonded, and I was like obsessed with game shows. But like for things like Jeopardy, I was just too dumb. I was too young for these things. And even like Wheel of Fortune, I wasn't great at it, and so it was I wasn't as engaged. So like when I started watching like Double Dare and like Figure It Out, all of those kind of like game shows, it was for me. It was made for me, and I loved these. I love these games so much.
There was the obstacle course at the end. Double Dare 2000 called this the slopsticle course. I just want you to just let that soak in as what we were dealing with at the turn of the millennium.
How do we make it?
We got real lucky. And that was always like my favorite part. I mean, I liked the trivia, and there was the whole like double dare physical challenge back and forth that always had high stakes and drama. But to me, it was all about the obstacle course at the end, even though in retrospect, I mean, we're just kind of talking about then and now at the same point here, but like those obstacles were neither complicated or really most of them were that fun.
No.
A lot of times on the obstacle course, it was just annoying. It's like, you have to slosh through this pool of thick liquid. Have fun.
And you get dirty the whole time with the gunk. And like some of them are like, slide down this goopy slide and grab this flag, but you're already all sloppy and messy because of the other obstacles. So it's actually kind of hard, I guess. So
fall flat on your face when you slip on the floor.
And then you have to climb up the slide, which good luck. It's got goop all over it.
So like, I'm literally, as we're doing this, I have it on mute, but I'm watching an episode right now. Like just like as it's going, and it's fun. But I never actually knew what the slime was made of, because like your face is in all of that shit, and that seems gross. Like, what is it made of?
I have no idea, and I'm gonna go look it up.
Okay, because like I'm fine with the texture of the slime. Like I could do these things, I think, but these kids have it like in their mouths, and I'm like, that is disgusting.
It probably, I mean, it had to be non-toxic, obviously. I don't think it tastes very good, but while Chris looks that up, though, there was one thing that bothered me a lot about this show was, there, like Chris said, there's the drama of the dare, double dare, physical challenge. Nobody ever answered the question after the double dare. It's like, what a way to make more money. Like, I know the answer, but I'm pretty sure they don't know it, so I'm going to dare them. They're going to double dare me back, and then I'm going to double the amount of money I could win.
Yeah,
$50, get the question
$100,
right.
$200. That's 4 correct answers if you just answer the first way.
I know. So it was one of those things like, if it's not a super easy question, but I know what it is, and I'm looking over at them, and they don't seem to know, I'll gamble.
Yeah.
But nobody ever did that. I can't think of a time anyone got $200 on that question.
I guess you just didn't want to risk the other team stealing. But again, if it's something obscure and you feel pretty confident in it, it's worth the bet. You only have to be right 1 in 4 times. I guess 1 in 2 because they're going to get $100 if they steal.
If they get
still.
Yeah, even so, you do that once a show and you're like, okay, cool, got it.
Yeah.
And then the other time is going to make them do a physical challenge, which they could pass anyway. So
there's weird math involved here as far as like EVs and IVs, because technically it's actually a little more than 2 to 1 because you're still making money off the 50 up if you get it. So there's a whole math to it that I'm sure is interesting, and kids are like, what?
And I feel like in the 80s, nobody thought, like, I think we've been spoiled by Moneyball era and sports analytics and stuff that we always think of these things. But like I think in the 80s, they're like, well, I don't know it, so I guess I'm not going to answer it. No, I don't know it either. So
yeah, I also think like kids are dumb. They're not going to be thinking of like making more money. They're just like, I'm on a game show. I don't know.
Okay,
maybe
so I had the slime origin story. I'm interrupting. I apologize.
Yes.
You Can't Do That on Television was the original source of this, which I would have guessed.
I don't know that one.
It was like early Nickelodeon, like as early as Nickelodeon could be. Like it started in '84 or something like that.
Yeah, I never watched it when it was
show.
on. I only watched it like reruns and stuff.
It was like a kid's Saturday Night Live type of thing, which is a sketch show.
And an ad.
So kind of like All That.
Yeah, I'd say, but kind of
like an in between. There were some like game showish elements to it still. Kind of. It's like it was more of a playful version of an All That, whereas that was more like sketch comedy.
Okay.
And also one of my, well, we already talked about it on the show, but one of my favorite girls of all time is from there. So,
who was that again?
Lisa Foyles.
That's
right.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. I remember that now.
So in episode 4 of season 1, there's this thing where like this kid's not supposed to pull a chain, and if he does, gets a bucket of sludge. This is sludge in air quotes. It wasn't actually sludge. What it was, however, is the day's food scraps from the cafeteria. You add a little water, makes fake sewage. That was fine, I guess. They ran out of time that week. When they came back the next week for the show, nobody made a new batch. The previous batch had 8 inches of green crud growing on the mixture, but the show must go on because, on television. So they dumped those leftovers on the kid too, and people thought that was funny.
Yeah, until the kid got some sort of food poisoning.
It's disgusting.
Eventually, the sludge ended up adding some like green color from latex paint. That was the rotting.
God.
Eventually, they stopped using it because they didn't want things to get in kids' eyes or mouth because, switched to like green Jell-O and flour mixture. And then over time, it switched to like cream of wheat, green food coloring, cooking oil, and baby shampoo.
There you go. That sounds more like it.
And then it was switched to Double Dare. Actually, itself had applesauce, green food coloring, vanilla pudding, and a bit of non-dairy creamer.
Okay, that's doable. I could eat that.
It's not. No, that would not be good.
And that's what people have actually said at the end of this article from the Daily Dot, so we source it properly. Yeah, good for you. It says like it's gotten safer but not tastier over time.
Yeah.
Gross.
Well, anything is better than that first green bucket because that's disgusting.
God, that's so gross.
Imagine that, and especially not knowing it was coming.
I would. Ugh.
Like, that would make you throw up.
By the time you got to Double Dare, you knew you were going to probably get, unless you played like a perfect game, you're probably getting dirty. You're probably getting slimed at some point. So it's a possibility that you can brace yourself for. This poor kid the first time.
No idea.
What's this? Yeah. Pull.
Who is this person? Like, I kind of want to know who this like. They're just some schmo. Like, they're probably like in their 30s now, just like late 30s now. Just like living their life.
I assume he beats his wife.
Or 40s. Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it depressing? All these kids that are in mid-80s Nickelodeon shows are pushing 50.
God, that's so weird.
It's also not a good look for the hosts. Like, Mark Summers doesn't look bad for his age or anything. It's just he looks really old. And then again, it's like, it's been 30 years.
There's a reason.
He was the source of my youth. He was like the mid-30s guy in a room full of kids. So I was like, oh, there's the adult. Now, he's approaching retirement.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yep.
All right. So, Double Dare. Back then. Loved it. Thought it was great. I related to it. I wanted to be on it, but I was way too scared. So I could live vicariously through these kids and yell at the TV when they fucked up. I liked other shows more than it for some reason. I think it was just a product of the time. There were just newer shows that I would watch more often. But when it was on, I would definitely watch it and I enjoyed it. So I'd probably then give it like a 7.5.
I'm in the same boat. I think I'd do probably an 8 because I did definitely like watching as a kid. It was something my sister and I could watch together, and that was kind of big at the time. So it was something I always imagined, and I actually would love to have done with my family. The problem is, I think it was 5 member teams, and we only had 4 in my family, so I was like, "Who's the 5th one going to be?"
It was 4
Was it 4?
sometimes.
I thought it was 4. Okay.
A lot of times what you would see was like they tried to be as balanced as possible. So the main teams I remember, at least off the top of my head, was like mom, dad, brother, sister. So you actually were sort of tailor-made for it.
Okay. So I always imagined my dad trying to do this stuff, and it made me laugh a lot. So that definitely bumps it up. But
I like the humor prospects. I feel like he would get frustrated.
Yeah, which would be even more funny in a way.
Like the trivia would be fine, and then there'd be the physical challenges that were made harder for really no known reason, and he would not like that.
Yeah, but in 1991, when I was 6 and he was 25 or 30, yeah, he'd be fine. Sorry, I did
was
math
6
wrong.
and he was 9.
But like when he was 30, he would have been doing just fine.
Yeah, that's
he
true.
would have been able to do just fine. So anyway, back then I give it an 8. Just it's knocked down a little bit because the concept was kind of easy, and then it bothered me that no one answered those trivia questions the second time around. So.
You said, won't let that go, will you, Dave?
It bothers me because I always wanted to be like, when you heard dare the first time, you're like, well, they're doing a physical challenge because there's no other option apparently.
Yeah, that's true. As soon as you hit that double dare, you're done. You're done. Pack it up. I would give it, this is weird for me. I actually have not thought, even going into this, what I would rate these. And the reason I say that is because, like Michelle, this was not my favorite. And unlike Michelle, I didn't have any interest in being on it. I mean, maybe a little. I thought it was kind of interesting. It wasn't like it would be torture, but I would have much rather been on Legends of the Hidden Temple. I would have much rather been on Wild and Crazy Kids. I would have much rather been on Figure It Out.
Wild and Crazy Kids!
I forgot all about that one. I love that show.
That's an obscure one. That's the obscure one. That was maybe my sentimental favorite. Legends had better production value and the thematic stuff that I really like overall, and nowadays it's my favorite. At the time, Wild and Crazy Kids was the one I was tuning into that block for.
Wow,
that song was the best too. Wild and Crazy Kids.
Yep.
Yes!
It was so 90s.
Wow,
so
that I literally haven't thought about that since I was a child. Like, that's so crazy.
I mean, everything about Nickelodeon is steeped in 90s, so like the whole thing gets that package, but that theme song in particular is like the epitome of the 1990s.
Yes, indeed.
So back then, I enjoyed watching the show. It was not my favorite, wasn't even top 3, but it was part of a whole block of stuff that I like to watch, so I'm going to give it a 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what the problem was, too? Like, the trivia seemed to be really hit or miss. I'm not sure how to reconcile it because you got grown-ups, again, in the family format. There was one that was just kids, but sometimes it was grown-ups and kids. So what trivia do you ask? Do you do a mix? Do you try and find something that both can know? It's not easy, but still. And plus, you know what?
Yeah.
Even just the run-of-the-mill physical challenges, some of them, not very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them were cool and seemed interesting for like the little 60-second thing they were doing. And some of them I'm like, this looks awful, and I want this short time in my life to be over.
So that leads me into thinking of it now. And when I watch anything of it now, and I haven't watched for a while, but I'm remembering some of the physical challenges. The worst one they ever did was anything where you had to put some sort of catapult on top of the person's helmet and launch a projectile into some other person's hat.
Yes.
Damn near impossible for everyone.
Yep.
It was just like fling, oh, it went 2 inches. Fling, oh, it went to the other side of the studio. It's like, can I control how far this goes? No? Okay, cool. I've got 10 more seconds.
Yeah, that one was kind of just like a recipe for failure. Like, and so it's not really that fun to watch. You're just like, there's nothing. I guess it's silly, and so for little kids, that must be exciting. Oh my God, the things are getting everywhere. But like, that's, if you're playing, that'd be so frustrating.
It would drive me nuts.
Yeah. God, it's tough now because again, I have not even thought of this like game show in years and years and years. I do appreciate the gap that it filled for young people being able to like engage in this kind of like active and intellectual, because just trying to hit all of the buttons. I think that's really cool, and I don't actually know of any that Well, Dave, I'll ask you, is there anything like this anymore? Like, I know they're reviving it, but like, is there anything else original that is like this?
My kids aren't quite old enough to really watch like Nickelodeon.
That's true.
The
And
one thing
besides,
that I think is, I'm stepping in, but the one
Yeah.
thing I thought of earlier was Minute to Win It.
I don't know that.
yeah, it's a lot of little mini games where you have 1 minute to complete a task. It's like, here's a box of Kleenex, rip out every Kleenex in 1 minute.
And some of them
Like-
involved team ups. Some of them were solo challenges, but some of them were team ups where I was like, okay, they were they didn't involve the slippery gackiness of Nickelodeon's type game, but there was a few of them where I was like, this is kind of shades of Double Dare.
Yeah.
So I have to give it points for it filling this need that I didn't even know we needed back in the day. But like, I thought it was pretty creative. Like, even though it kind of seemed like some of the challenges were phoned in, like the trivia wasn't great. Like, I think it was pretty original for its time, and I have to give it points for that. All that said, though, I mean, there are better game shows these days, like by far. And I think of it fondly, but I don't ever really have the need to like go back to it and like relive it or anything. I'm definitely moved on past Double Dare. So like now, I think just for like nostalgia's sake, I'd give it like a 5.
So me, I'm now imagining myself in a flipped role, obviously, because I'm imagining how it would be with me being in my dad's role back in the day. And it's still one of those things that there are not too many like TV shows that families can be a part of. There's been random ones around. They've tried on network TV and it never works. This one was one of those ones that works. I think it did have a pretty good mix of like parents and kids doing stuff together, and I like that. So even now, it's not something I'm gonna like, oh cool, I'll pull up Double Dare on YouTube and like watch it and see how these people did on their game show. But I still like the idea of it. I like the execution for the most part. There's obviously issues, but and Mark Summers is a cool host. He still is a cool host. I like watching Good Eats, even though that's been off the air for years now. So I think overall I will give it a 7.5.
Wow.
So dropping just a little bit.
Well, it would be a shame if I gave away my score in the beginning because then people wouldn't tune into the end. So, some of my feelings about this have shifted. On the one hand, I do feel like the kid interest that I had is gone. I don't think I'd want to do this as a grown-up especially. And I'm not really afraid of scenarios where I might look a bit foolish, but this one in particular just seems like it's a shell game of sorts that's rigged against the parents. Again, like, slide down this really tight tube, and it's like, well, the kids do it great, and then the grown-ups have to go through, and it's like, and again, it's dirty, and you look silly, and it's just a whole thing. Then again, if Andre Drummond can do it, and he apparently was a guest on the new run that just happened, well, he's a giant individual, so maybe I can't complain.
He's a bigger giant than you, Chris.
Mark Summers was great. He's definitely the quintessential Nickelodeon host. There were others from other games, but he did several in that span, and so that has some help for it. I like that it's back. I think it does fill a void, like Dave said, that you don't really see elsewhere. There's some other things with families, but a lot of times it's not kids and adults. Like Family Feud, for example, often had entire families, but they're all grown-ass people because you don't want kids answering the innuendo-laden questions that Steve Harvey has to deal with.
I hate it.
Does it bother anyone else that he always acts surprised when they give an innuendo? It's like, dude, drop the act.
It does ever since it became popular, yeah. Because the first time you saw like, the compilation video a few years ago, you're like, oh man, look at this poor guy, what he has to deal with. And now that he's leaned into the skid.
Well, and they're writing it. They're like writing people into it. They're writing their answers into it, so it's dumb.
Yeah. There is one thing I have to show you guys a link of, like a dystopian Steve Harvey who is surrounded with the sad, like slow motion music and stuff. Yeah, it's like a 3-minute video of him just sinking into despair.
There's this guy called Vic Berger who's obsessed with him, and that's probably where it came from, Chris. But like, he loves to like pull weird like snippets of Steve Harvey looking like completely just desolated, and like putting weird like air horns in the background, and like it's so funny. I love it.
A man who's reached his breaking point. My score is going to be a 6. Time has not caused this to go especially well to me. It's still good. I wouldn't even mind watching a couple of episodes, but I feel like, on the old ones, the trivia is not going to hold up at all. It's one of those where I think it's very time-specific, so that the longer you get away from it, the worse it is. And B, again, there's just the format itself, well, I think it works great for what it is not something that I'm especially interested in now.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, Double Dare is not going inside the time capsule.
Man. Too bad. I really want to. I want to go on this show. Like, all the reasons you said you don't want to do it, Chris, is like exactly the reason I want to.
You know what the other problem is? The prizes suck.
It was like, I think some of the prizes were like, you get a trip to Universal Studios Florida. It's like, but we're here filming this show already.
Yeah.
We're coming back.
Space camp.
Yeah.
Which, as a kid, fine, but I'm not a kid anymore. And the biggest problem to me is, like, so at the time, I didn't understand. Shit, $50 for a correct answer for a trivia question. Like, wow, $50. Holy cow.
All right.
Now, we know how much a half hour of television costs between the ads you can sell for it and what it costs to produce. Like, we saw with, the rise of game shows in the late 90s, things like Millionaire and Greed giving out hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. They were penny pinching the shit out of these families.
I mean, it was Nickelodeon. They were kind of a fledgling network at 1986.
You can make that argument in the beginning, but by the mid-90s, Nickelodeon was the biggest deal. There was no Cartoon Network yet.
Yep.
Nickelodeon was the kids' network if you had cable, which I did not. So,
no Time Capsule.
No Time Capsule. Maybe our second thing will fare better. It is another Nickelodeon's mid-90s game show, although slightly later into the decade, that we have not mentioned at this point, but have mentioned on this time several times on this podcast several times before. It's Do You Have It?
Guts.
Also, a very 90s theme song.
Oh, just so much.
Everything about it, the pictures, the font, everything was
the
90s.
Color splashes, and you know what? This song is a little more late 90s because it's got that little bit of like, hey, we're white people, but we're going to incorporate just a smidge of hip hop and see how that goes.
Yeah, totally.
Just feel it out a little bit.
So Guts is interesting for me because I was not a super active kid growing up. Like I would run around and do a bunch of stuff, but like, I know, shocking, right? But like, I didn't connect to this game show pretty much at all because I didn't aspire. Basically, somewhere Sean is like screaming internally because I was the exact opposite of him as a child, I think. None of this really appealed to me. It was probably my least favorite game show or game, whatever it is. And I would turn the channel when it was on because it just did not interest me at all. Like, some of the things that they would do is cool. I played the video game more than I watched the actual show.
Wow, was that video game any good?
No, it was terrible.
I didn't think so.
I think I rented it once. I remember it being
so
poor.
Bad. But that's what I mean. I would play the game more than I watched the show.
So I am already thinking of giving this a high score because Moira is a huge factor in giving a high score. She was awesome. The referee in there. Mike O'Malley lowers that score, but...
Well, yeah, he was bad. The question I had to ask myself is, was one of my earliest sexual fantasies about Moira Quirk?
I don't blame you if it was. Like,
and I think it might have
really
been.
No reason not to.
Now, teenage years were confusing and complicated, so it hit me at the weird time, but at the same time, I'm like, I remember being like, yeah, she should be my wife. Obviously, you're a late, like a preteen or a teenager, you're kind of stupid, but I was like, yeah, we could settle down. Yeah.
I mean, she had that British accent, which was just, to someone who hadn't really experienced British accents very much outside of like my dad watching Monty Python, that was like, hello, who are you?
And I don't know what it was. Maybe I just liked sports in general, but something about just like reasonably attractive woman in referee outfit.
Mm-hmm.
It worked.
Solid.
It worked.
So that helps the score a lot.
So now that we're done mansplaining Mo, what else do we have?
It was, honestly, this is the show I watched besides Legend of the Hidden Temple. Because that one, Molly and I, my sister and I, could watch and like think of how we would work together on it. This one was all individual. This one was like, oh yeah, I'm an athlete. I would kick ass at this show. And I thought of myself in all the different like bungee cord sports and like, oh, I could do this. Oh, I'd race up that mountain. I don't care if I get a bunch of mist in my face. It's fine. I'll do it. And so I had like delusions of grandeur of winning every single episode of this game.
I like it. I liked it a lot then. I like it a lot now. I'm not going to tip my hand too much. And I think I might have liked it more then than now, but I'm still sorting that out in my head.
Yep.
But
I definitely like it more now than I did then.
Score.
Oh, yeah, the score.
Go ahead.
No,
I don't think Michelle gave her a score either, but I'll give my first score. And back then I'm giving it a 9.5. Perfect. Almost perfect, but the kids had no personality. Like, they never actually, they gave them all these crazy nicknames, but they never once actually like interviewed them. They were just these faceless kids.
And when they did, it was bad.
Dave, that's actually one of the reasons why I didn't like it, because at least the others, you kind of like got to know the kids, and especially with Figure It Out. That's why I was obsessed with that show. It's like it was all about their like weird little secret, and you kind of got to know them, and then at the end it kind of revealed that they would like demonstrate it on the stage. It was so cool, and I like felt like I was connected to these kids, and I loved it. With Guts, I didn't feel that connection, and so I was like, why am I watching this? Because again.
They were helmets and shirts. So they were the colors is really all that mattered.
And giant mouthpieces.
Yeah. And giant mouthpieces. Yes.
The thing that really, if Guts has a fault, and you can argue it doesn't, I'm pausing for the viewers to think about that. Okay, it has faults. If Guts has a fault, one of the main ones I would point to is that, because in the other shows, even something like Double Dare, you could learn a lot about the kids and the families by watching them fail.
Yeah.
This was basically like Olympics Light, which is a strength of the program because these are all these like little miniature pseudo-Olympic events, sometimes with bungee cords and other fun things. But at the end of the day, I work for a newspaper. There's a reason why we don't cover kids in sports. It's because, fair or not, they don't know how to talk for shit.
No,
If you go up and put a microphone in front of them and ask them questions about an activity they just completed, they're going to give you nothing as far as meaningful quotes or personality. 98% of the time. So I don't know what they could have done to fix it. But because this was such a straightforward format, I don't think they were ever going to get much out of the kids.
Yeah,
not even their fault. It's just their kids.
No,
it's just their kids.
You can do.
They were touring Universal Studios. Somebody roped them in and said, "Hey, you want to be on this game show on TV?" And their parents were like, "Yeah, do it, you fucking bitch, do it." And the kids were like, "This seems fun. I guess I'll do it." And then that was what happened. The end.
and then they got a piece of this rock to take home.
Okay, so I'm watching an episode of it right now. Like it's just playing as we're talking.
Comment about Moira.
No, well, there is that, and I will say, like, yes, absolutely. But
kiss fingertips.
Yeah. So they didn't interview this kid, but he's 13, and here are the facts about this kid.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just
the facts.
What you were saying. Yeah. Horseback rider, and then and then jumped off a 2-story roof. Like, why is this here? And then Robert Toro the Bull. Because they did the little nickname. It was so funny.
Sure.
Yeah.
They had to. Again, that was their attempt to separate the kids from each other in any way possible.
Toro. It's so silly. Like, But anyway.
I'm hoping he jumped off the second floor roof onto the horse. And he just rode off into the sunset. Hi-ho!
And then the idea of Mike O'Malley just screaming as loud as he could, "The bull's gonna finish!" Ah!
And it's sometimes like screaming at the kids when they were failing, like trying it. It was meant to be encouraging, but if you go back and listen to it, my suspicion is you're going to find the tone was less than encouraging. He's not as bad about this as Kirk Fogg was on Legends, who was really bad towards the end of that show about just like hyper criticizing the kids who couldn't find the stupid temple objectives. But it's a little much.
Yeah,
it's still a little much here too.
The head of the monkey is right there, kids. Just pick it up, put it on top.
Turn the base around. It has to fit in the square. Oh my god.
This is so funny. I remember that. But yeah, so I very, very poor perception of it when I was young, just because, didn't really relate to it. Then I would have given it like a 3.
I would have given it like that 9.5 from Dave sounds about right. I don't want to give it a 10. Because there were occasionally like little events they did. Usually didn't stick around very long, but some of them were like, no. But I also like the idea that, you had all the gack and the goop and stuff we talked about with Double Dare. Here you had like on land events. Some was like track, and some were like, like in the bungee stuff that were kind of fun. Some climbing. There was a basketball one I liked. And there were also like aquatic ones. But it was just straight up water. So you got to be, in Florida, you got to have some fun times swimming about, doing physical challenges there. So overall, I liked them. There were a few misses. Mike's not a great host. Moira's hot. And so 9.5.
Can I help your impression of Mike O'Malley by I found a picture of Mike O'Malley and Moira with Mike O'Malley wearing a Suns jersey?
9.5.
Thank you. It's still the same.
It's exactly the same. It helps my impression of Mike. If I were rating Mike, he would go from a 3 to a 3.2. It does not help with Guts.
It's just there. It's the old school purple Suns jersey too of the early 90s. So
now,
it's pretty solid.
If you had told me that Mo was in a Suns jersey, I would probably be leaving this show immediately and going to find wherever she was. And it wouldn't be a good look for me. She's probably got a life and she's
25
married,
years ago,
and she's probably like 20 years older than me. 49. Not as bad as I thought. But even so, she's married. She has 2 kids. Doesn't matter. I'm going to go find her.
Sorry, not so much luck on that one.
The phrase the kids say is "I'm prepared to risk it all."
Do not miss your chance to flow.
No.
This opportunity comes once in a lifetime.
Oh my god!
I often end up in the last position on these by prospect of being the host or whatever, so I'll go first on now and let you guys decide whether or not it goes in. It has not faded a ton. It is not a 9.5. I don't know if that's because the older version of me that's now giant is jaded because I couldn't do half these things anymore, or because the concept of bungee basketball is probably not nearly as fun as it looks because you basically have to get within like 6 feet of it and then chuck the thing at it awkwardly as you get pulled back by the bungee. So I'm probably a little jaded as an adult, and the nostalgia has faded a bit. I'm still going to give it an 8.5. I do wish, I mean, we've been trained by television in the last 15 years because of reality TV and all of its offshoots, even into game shows, that like the character backstory matters. Even on like The Wall, for example, that more recent show with Chris Hardwick and LeBron James backing it. They have all this time to be like, oh, this is a young couple, and they have hardships financially, and you just want to really root for them because they have this whole thing. I didn't root for these kids worth shit. At least with Head and Temple, I was like, I like this color, so I'm rooting for that team.
Yeah.
I don't care about these kids. I hope they all fail. So it's hard for me to have a rooting interest when I watch this now. As a kid, I wasn't so bitter. Now I am, and as such, 8.5. Mo's still hot.
So Michelle is the kind of the unknown here, I think. So I'm going to go second and let Michelle decide whether it goes in or not. I am right with Chris again on 8.5 because it drops a little bit because there's, like I said, not knowing the kids. It was really one of those things too. Like after they were finished with the aggro crag, the big mountain at the end, they would like hold up their trophy and they'd be like, "Yay!" Like they looked dead inside.
That's because there's a couple reasons for that. One, let's be honest, the aggro crag rock is a shitty trophy, even if it glows in the dark. And two, they just had to run around for like the last 3 minutes up this mountain where there's confetti shooting into their face and they have to find these little fucking buttons that are hard to see. And now somebody's shoving a trophy at them and making them smile for a camera. So I get it to some extent.
Yeah. So other things, Mo has aged wonderfully. I just looked up a couple pictures of her. She's aged awesome. That helps, Chris, if you want to go chase her down.
Are we still kissing fingertips?
What's that?
Are we still kissing fingertips? Just
yeah, totally. Okay. And honestly, I would love to see this in an adult version where they have, athletes trying some of these games. Like they'd obviously ramp up the difficulty, but I think it'd be pretty cool to watch. So it'd be fun.
Is this show why I like Ninja Warrior? At least a little bit. Yeah.
It helps.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah.
Because that is sort of, without an aggro crag, but it's sort of what this is, but for grown-ups who can do more impressive physical feats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. So, like, this is kind of weird for me. I don't know. Like, again, I didn't watch a ton of it to really to have a great basis for my rating. But I think looking at it now, I respect it more. I wish I would have been more into it because I think it's actually, some of the challenges are really inventive. It looks like a lot of fun, honestly. And I do think it kind of inspired in some way, like our love for like Ninja Warrior and these more adult versions of it. Also, it like encourages like kids being active, and like that's really cool too. And I'm in support of that. I would watch this probably more as an adult than I did as more as an adult than I did as a kid. And enjoy it thoroughly. So I would give I'll give it a 7.
No, it was in. You could have gone lower and it still would have been in. So it's
I know,
cool.
but I don't think I like it. I think it's cool.
Awesome.
I mean, our relatively high scores meant it only needed a 4 to get in, but
yeah,
7 means it clears the bar comfortably.
It's crazy to think that Mike O'Malley like dragged that down as much as he did, but he was really bad.
But it
was still good
that they never replaced him.
Yeah. I mean, it was only on the air for 4 years, so...
Yeah, I mean, I get it. He was kind of the host and whatever, but I'm like, how did you even survive the casting call for this?
They wanted someone with energy, and they got him.
I think it's honestly... Mo is great on her own. It's part of why I think I liked Mo so much, because I'm like, look, she has personality. She's a person.
She did great.
She has a cool name. She has a cool accent. What do you have, Mike? You have nothing.
Nothing.
And you are nothing. And I hope you're dead, but I don't know if he is. And I don't actually hope he's dead, but...
He's got that Suns jersey, Chris. I mean, that's...
He's 51.
That's something.
Wow, 51.
What is he best known for? He was on Yes Dear, the CBS series from 2000 to 2006. He was
That
also
went on for
nominated for an
6
Emmy
years?
for Glee. I did not know he was on Glee.
What?
Good Lord.
What? All right, hold on. I need to follow this up. I know we're kind of like over our time here, but I need to follow up on the fact that fucking Mike O'Malley was on Glee.
This rabbit hole is getting deeper.
First appeared in the 4th episode of the first season called Preggers. Well, that's already a bad start.
Oh, boy.
Huh. The character's been well received by critics. Mike's talent is deep, said one critic. Nominated for a Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy Series, which is still a very niche award, but still, that's not what I would have expected. I'm stunned and baffled, and I had to reevaluate everything, and my score for him went down to a 2.8.
Oh, boy.
Even with the Suns jersey.
Even with the Suns jersey, damn it.
So Double Dare...
I wish I could tell. Which player that was, but it doesn't say. I can't see it in the picture.
Double Dare gets shunned. Does not make it in. Guts does. I don't know how you fit a television show in there. I'm assuming we would just put the Aggro Crag trophy in. People will figure it out.
It's fine. No
Figure
problem.
it out.
Yep. You got it. You got it. I'm
Oh my
so
God.
clever. I'm very proud of myself. Let me do the
Did you mean
Michelle
that?
thing. So anyways, that's the end of this episode. We'll see if the new segment manifests next week. It depends on all of us being there. We have to debut it with the full crew. What's the point? But that's the plan, and we'll talk about it when the time comes. Until then, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com, on social media at Team Objection. You can see them all listed at the bottom of your screen if you're doing this correctly and watching. If you're listening, you're hearing my voice in anyways. It's youtube.com/Objection Network for videos 7 days a week, including the Anachronism, which is back and running in full. And finally, you can send us emails at objectionnetwork@gmail.com. See you next time.
Bye.